Hello, my name is West Mulholland, and I play Ryan in Steven Soderbergh's new film Presence, and this is Young Entertainment. Hi, Ella. Glad to be on the call. How's it going?
Good. Yeah. Thanks so much for FaceTiming, West.
Oh,
All right.
absolutely.
Here at Young Entertainment, we're all about like masterclass moments. We love
Mhm.
for our audience to learn from young and talented actors in the field, such as yourself. So that's kind of the lens with which we like to ask our questions. So to start it
Love it.
off, just what was the audition process like for Presence?
So the audition process for Presence was just, sort of my standard. I got a self-tape and instantly, I knew it was a Soderbergh film. And I lost my mind a little bit because I am such a big fan.
Yeah.
And I've just been studying his work. I'm a film and media studies major. And I just absolutely loved the opportunity. I was ready to jump on it, and that's exactly what I did. At the time, there was no script, and so all I had to work on was, or all I had to work with was just the sides. And so I really sort of like, you know, develop or I digested the sides. I tried to build the character of Ryan, what I thought he could be, because it was a little ambiguous. I just basically had to go based on, what they were giving me in the sides and really build around that. I also knew that Carmen Cuba, who is
Yeah.
so wonderful at her job, she brought together like the greatest. I couldn't imagine a better cast for this film. I love everybody, and they're just such talented and wonderful humans and actors, and it was just a blessing to be able to work with everybody in the cast. I remember I did my research on her as well and kind of what she likes to look for when she's casting certain projects. And one thing that really stuck out to me was
Mhm.
how she loves what actors do with their characters in between the lines. And so I made sure to have this very rehearsed because Ryan, I wanted to add an element of his body was always doing something, but his mind and his eyes were like locked in on you and completely hyper focused. But his
Yeah.
body was kind of doing something else, but you weren't really too concerned with that because you were just kind of mesmerized by what he was saying and what he was speaking. And then I actually remember for the callback, so I submitted the self tape, didn't hear back for like a couple of weeks, and I was on a camping trip because I just finished my senior year, and me and my boys were going up the coast. We were gonna hit Sequoia, and I think we were camping at Islay Creek at the time, and I
Mhm.
get a call from my manager saying, "Hey, you have the call back. We need you down here
Yeah.
as soon as possible." So I hopped on an Uber and then a train and then a bus. I
Uh-huh.
almost missed the bus by like a minute. It was so hectic. But I went over the lines and I did even more research on the way back and got on a call with Carmen. And now I'm here talking to you about this incredible film.
Very exciting. And yeah, that kind of led perfectly into my next question. So I know you mentioned you didn't get the script originally when you were auditioning. Did you know anything about your character, Ryan, in general? Did you know his name? Did you know kind of what role he'd play, or
I
not at
knew
all?
his name.
Okay.
I knew that he was captain of the swim team. I knew that he was
Uh-huh.
best friend with Eddie, and I knew that he had a crush on Kalina's character, Chloe.
Uh,
Um, and so, sort of based on that, I think in the description it was like stereotypical bad boy with
yeah.
like inherent, like sort of, I don't want to say darkness, but more just like he has some weight weighing him down, internally in his soul. And so I tried to add whatever my element of that, sort of the sadness and the darkness and the deepness behind the eyes that he was really concealing. To me, it read that he was a very hurt individual, in
Yeah.
some way in his life. And then, after reading the script, I found out, he had this whole backstory with his mother, which I was so wonderful, getting Steven's permission to sort of, and David, the writer's permission to build on that aspect of the character. And based on, what they had already presented in the script. And so, based on the initial audition elements, I sort of took all that and I made a playlist. I remember that was a really big thing that I do for all of my characters. For this one,
Okay.
um, I guess I'll list some of the artists.
Yeah, we always love to ask people about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was on your
So for this, it was definitely Nirvana was a big influence. The Deftones, Hole, um, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, sort of like this 90s
yeah.
rock, grunge was kind of like he was, he's very, very, I feel like loud in his head. He's got a lot of, he's the kid that likes to keep his headphones on while he's walking, keeping his head down, maybe hoodie on, even though he is like, sort of the popular kid. So I thought the rock element sort of got me into that. It got me feeling like excited and like, sort of pumped up on the inside, but then just like based on the lyrics and what they were talking about, I kind of got into like this darker, deeper, sad sort of state. And that really helped me, especially on the day, for a bunch of different scenes.
Yeah, very cool. And yeah, after watching the film, I feel like those songs encapsulate Ryan perfectly. So that's so cool. And
Basement
yes,
was a huge one. I know Steven was so open, to collaborating. We had pitched a bunch. I know like Porcelain by Red Hot Chili Peppers was another one I wanted.
uh-huh.
But yeah, it was so awesome just getting to collaborate because Steven really, he has so much on his plate as he's the director, but also the editor and the videographer, and so or the director of photography, and he was the camera operator. And so him just trusting us and asking us for ideas for like, hey, what do you think should be playing in this scene? What kind of songs do you think your characters would listen to? Was just a really awesome thing that especially, a director of his, he's so incredible. And
Yeah,
so him just like asking, us the actors, me, Kalina, Eddie, the younger actors, like our input was just a really confidence boosting and collaborative experience, which was something I'm gonna, cherish for the rest of my life.
that's so awesome. And yeah, like going off of that, just you booked this incredible role, and then what was your first day on set like, and how did that kind of set the tone for the rest of filming?
First, first day on set was very, I don't want to say scary, but I mean, obviously I'm very nervous. Steven Soderbergh,
Yeah,
I want to do the best I can. I honestly would like to speak more to sort of my prep in going up to that.
sure.
And so me and Kalina and Eddie got very tight on this film. And we, our producer, Julie, was very welcoming the first day we flew in, but she kind of sort of set us straight and was like, hey, Steven, he's a very fast director. He just likes to go. As soon as he knows that he's got it, he doesn't like take his time getting extra stuff. He's just, as soon as he gets it, that's it. We're done. We're moving on to the next thing. He likes to be as quick as possible. Doesn't like to waste anyone's time. He doesn't like people to waste his time. And so, hearing that, I'm like, great. I love to be prepared. I love to, come to set willing to have all these sort of ideas, but then also like if Steven is just like, hey, whatever you think is the way we're gonna go, I'm just gonna be here to film and kind of observe, very, very real, very raw, just kind of like what would you as the character sort of do in this situation. And so me and Kalina, I remember we had a lot of nights where we would stay up and prepare for the week or for the day before the scene. And that was just so helpful going into it. So then for my first day, I remember the first time acting with Eddie because my very first scene, I believe, is like when we kind of come over and I like get introduced to Chloe, but like we are already established best friends at this point. And so I think that was essential. Was although it wasn't written, we had to like improv going up the stairs because she hears us, right? So Steven
Yeah.
is in the room with her, and then they hear us coming up the stairs and sort of ad-libbing. And I remember Eddie was just so hilarious. He is so incredible at improv, and he just kept me on my toes. And it honestly didn't even feel like acting at that point. It just felt like two friends sort of making
Yeah.
fun of each other, talking, messing around. And it was actually such a treat to see like what Steven and because it kind of when I watched it, for the first time, the full film, I was like, oh my gosh, like everything we were saying, I remembered we were all
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
we were saying some pretty funny stuff. And so it was just so interesting to see what Steven chose. But it was also just like a reminder, hey, I'm always mic'd. So all this improv
Yeah.
stuff because sometimes we would go way off the characters. I guess it would still be in the universe, and then but it was just that was really fun. Eddie is incredible at improv, and it was just great. It was so comfortable going into it. I really felt a sense of security that I could lean on my other actors and castmates and Steven as well, and so that was wonderful.
Oh, that's so cool. And I guess because it was like a smaller cast, it was very tight knit. So in addition to Eddie, Kalina, what was it like working with Lucy Liu and Chris Sullivan, like legends in the industry? And
Oh
did
my
you pick
gosh,
up any
they
acting tips
are
from them?
incredible. They are
Yeah.
so kind and they just were like completely our mentors. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't a part of the family, but it felt like I was like the on-screen
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
They welcomed me in as one and they were just so kind and so caring. Lucy is one of the most kind people, I've ever met. She is so sweet and so supportive and just, I'm Asian American myself. I'm part white, part Asian, and growing up, like she was the actor, right? She
Yeah.
was like the person. She's what got me and a lot of my friends into this industry. And so getting to work with her and learn from her and just have a conversation with her about her process, her art was just so incredible and inspiring. And I'm going to appreciate I love that experience that we got to have and I just I'm so thankful to her. And Chris is so hilarious. I'm sure as you've seen in the film, he's just so kind and he's like just the perfect dad. I know
Yeah,
he has a son right now, and I'm sure he's the best dad in the world. And so it was just like, oh, he just was they were both so welcoming. And such mentors to me, Kalina, and Eddie.
yeah.
And it was just yeah, a wonderful time all around.
That's so special. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I guess going off like this is such a unique film just in terms of, the way they filmed it from that first person's perspective and then just from a technical standpoint, as you kind of mentioned, was there any like challenges that you faced, something you'd never done in the, acting world so far, on this film especially, and how did you overcome any of those challenges?
Yeah, so Steven, loves to be his own director of photography and editor, which means he was holding the camera on this one. So in a way, he was the ghost, as you know, this is from the experimental point of view of a ghost. And
Mhm.
so Steven, it was very much like a dance, because he would get so close up to your face and you just had to pretend like, you didn't notice that the ghost or
Yeah.
the presence was there. And so he himself was a character. So in a way, I got to say, I'm one of the lucky few actors in the world. I got to act with Steven Soderbergh, which is so
Uh-huh.
cool. But yes, it was very much like a dance. So when we rehearsed it the first time, I remember there would always be times when I bump into Steven or he bumps into me or like he gets too close and like gets my cheek and I have to like pretend like I didn't get, hit by the ghost. Or
Yeah.
maybe I even add that to the scene. Like, I sort of look around like, is there a
Yeah.
presence here? Because you're always on edge. You enter that house and it is a beautiful house. But I think just the atmosphere of the script and sort of how we are acting, it just added to the eeriness of the space.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was like an attic, especially when we were doing night scenes that we weren't allowed to go up to. And so that was like a creepy thing. All right, but like the restroom was up there, so you could only go up there to use the restroom. But I remember it was completely dark and there were no lights, and so that was pretty creepy. But in terms of just acting, I loved how we shot it, first of all, in chronological order, which I
Uh-huh.
think really helped me as an actor. It felt very much like a play because we would have these very long takes. Because it's from the point of view of a ghost, that's the only camera angle. There was no cutting. There was no let's get their coverage, now let's get your coverage. All right, let's get the wide, let's do all of that. So it really was just very real, very raw, and felt so much like theater, but like in an intimate way that is on-screen acting. And so that was so much fun to play around in that universe that they created. And I remember it was, like I said, I think the biggest thing was the preparation because, towards the end of the film, we have these very long, like 9-minute takes of
Yeah.
one, and you just have to be on it. You're going upstairs and downstairs, and you're going into this room and that room, and you have to, one, remember your choreography. Obviously, you have to have the lines down, but you just have to have a real sense of the character. And like a play, every night you just got to relive those emotions over and over. Although very limited takes, still for when we did have multiple takes, it was just bringing back the emotion again and again and again. And it was very, very intimate and just overall like the dance, like I was saying, it was very much a dance with Steven, sort of having to predict where he's going to be and he's predicting where I'm going to be if I wanted to add something, if I wanted to just be the character living in the space, which is very much what he sort of wanted for this project.
Yeah, and speaking of that, it's just like a slow burn, like suspense the entire movie. Like as a viewer and probably as an actor too, like you're constantly on your toes. Was there and like did you come into the film being like a big horror fan or did like anything actually scare you while you were on set?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So, like I was saying, that attic was pretty
Yeah,
freaking
yeah.
and so going upstairs, you would hear, I'm sure it was just like a PA's walkie, but you would hear these like sort of whispers and so that did freak me out. I also know that we had dreams, like me and Kalina and Eddie both had our own three separate ghost experiences
Okay.
while, being in the hotel. The hotel was wonderful and everybody is so sweet, but I believe it's like attached to an old retirement home as well. And
Mhm.
so like I had some very creepy, like almost sleep paralysis dreams where I woke up in the middle of the night and like had to go to the restroom and then realized that like I was in my bed and I was dreaming, but then I couldn't escape. And like all of a sudden I was in a different room. It was like locked in a chamber and there were like ghosts,
Uh-huh.
sort of like, or someone was pounding on my door. And I couldn't wake up. And I remember like just being in my bed, feeling like I was awake, but really I wasn't. And I couldn't scream and I couldn't wake up. So that was
Oh.
very terrifying. And I know that Kalina, me and Eddie, were very much pranksters. And so I don't know which one of us did it, but Kalina swears that she heard a knocking on her side of the door when we weren't there. Maybe we were, maybe we weren't, but I'm sure that's a story that Kalina is going to tell about how she
Oh, that's
got
so
spooked on set.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I made the mistake of watching the movie at night, which is probably not the best
Oh
idea,
my
but
goodness.
it was so good. I'm not usually a horror fan, but it did keep me on my toes. So that's super cool.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah, and on top, like, were there any special moments that you had while filming that you're just gonna, I mean, I'm sure the entire project you're gonna remember for your
Mm.
entire career, but were there any special moments just from hanging outside or hanging out with the cast outside of filming or just being on set that like you can, any specific moments you can pinpoint?
A really incredible special moment for me was right before we started filming. I believe it was like 1 or 2 days before. Steven invited me, Kalina, Eddie, Lucy, and Chris all out for dinner.
Oh, nice.
And I just remember taking a moment to be so appreciative and just so blessed that I was sitting at a table with the legendary Steven Soderbergh, the legendary Lucy Liu, the legendary Chris Sullivan, and then also my friends who I had gotten to know for like the past week, Kalina and
Yeah.
Eddie, and just sitting at a table with these like both industry professionals, but then also, people of my same caliber who are young, excited, enthusiastic artists, ready to tackle this incredible project that we had before us. And everybody was just, again, so kind and so welcoming. And I just felt so comfortable at that table as, starstruck as I may have been. I think that was the very first time I met Lucy as well. And everybody was just so kind, and everybody was also so interested in to hear what I had to say about the project, about my character, what sort of my thoughts were. And it was just such like a brainstorming session. It was almost like it felt like we were just getting our like I know we were eating at this very, very incredible,
Yeah.
nice restaurant, but it felt like we were getting our hands dirty. We were diving into the project, into the character dynamics, and just the story. And then it was also just so wonderful to get a moment to relax and to get to know these people as real, incredible, kind humans that they are. And just hear funny stories that we shared. Chris had so many funny stories. Steven surprisingly has so many fun quirks about how his sets are, and how he like always loves this certain Dr. Pepper from like the original Dr. Pepper
Uh-huh.
thing that he always tries to have a bottle of on set. And so it was just like so wonderful getting to hang out with these people who are so kind, and they're your heroes growing up. And so that is just a moment I'm gonna cherish forever.
Oh, that's so special. I'm sure it also just being a small cast, it was so incredible that you got to have these like brainstorming sessions and
Mhm.
had that input, which maybe you wouldn't get in like a huge, massive undertaking. So that's really cool. Yeah, and I also wanted to ask about, I saw you attended the Sundance Film Festival where the film first premiered. We wanted to ask about that experience. Was that, I assume that was your first time going. Just what was that like, having people watch you in that movie?
It was so much fun. Sundance was, oh my gosh, it was just the best time. I got to wear all these fancy clothes and I got to walk down the street. And, I'm a Southern California boy, so I'm not used to the snow. And it was
Uh-huh.
snowing so much. I remember me and Eddie had like a hot tub that we shared. And
Mhm.
we like got to, we would take turns like dipping in the hot tub and then dipping in the snow and then dipping in the hot tub. And that was like super
That's so
fun.
fun.
But the festival itself was, just such a spectacular, like cool event. It's just oh my gosh, it was like being at Disneyland or something, but like
Yeah.
for a filmmaker, and so it was just so awesome, like just getting to see all the people on the street, and going to all the different interviews. Everybody was so kind, and we got so much cool like merch and stuff too that people were just
Uh-huh.
so kind and giving to us. And so I still rep my boots and my shoes and
Yeah.
my jacket and my beanies that I got from there. And I was a little sad that I didn't get to see any movies, just because the nature of the festival, you have so many different events
Yeah.
you have to attend, and different interviews. But yeah, it was a really great time. My family was there and they got to see all the films, so they sort of told me and were hyping up films, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're seeing them.
Oh, next time.
But
Yeah.
it was great doing that. And it was great just having meeting people on the street who had seen your film.
Yeah.
It's like the first reaction. It's the first time I had seen the film, and but then
Mhm.
I would have all sorts of people come up to me and talk to me about my character. In particular, I remember these three very kind women who came up to me, and it was like they were in their little group, and they must have been from Park City, but they were like, oh my gosh, it's you. You're so horrible. And they're like, oh, but you're so kind in person, and we love you.
Yeah.
And it was just so great, having those little interactions where people asked, sort of about my craft and what it was like to be on that set. And then I loved hearing about their thoughts on the film and on my character.
Yeah. Oh,
And it was just such special little moments.
That's so cool. And yeah, yeah, I was gonna ask more about like people's reactions to the film, but you kind of covered that perfectly. So I guess just two more questions that I have before we go into a couple rapid fire. So you're young in your career, young and rising, and we love to get advice for especially for our audience, people looking to break into the entertainment industry. What do you think is one thing one or young people should know before they start acting and getting into their careers?
You really you put into it as much as you get out. For example, that camping trip that I had to miss in order to get this part. I know my friends would tell me that like, dude, why would you do that? I would never do something like that. Like we're having such a great time on the camping trip. They told me that before I had gotten the part.
Mhm.
So then afterward they were like, all right, that was the right call. But you really have to be willing to make sacrifices. And you have to be willing to, just totally throw yourself into this world. Because it is such a fun and special and rewarding world to be a part of, but it does take an insane amount of grinding, and it takes an insane amount of just applying yourself and seeking every opportunity that you have. I remember, it probably took me roughly like 10 years from when I started acting to like now here's where I am. And so really you just got to stick with it, and you got to have a real passion and love for it. And you can't forget that too. You can't forget why you started. I remember I think one of my acting teachers recommended that before I had my first audition to write a letter to myself, to sort of like go into it, like sort of write a letter like, wow, you're about to step into this whole new world. What do you feel like? What are you excited by? Like, what are you excited for? What do you think is going to happen? What do you want to happen? And so it's a letter I return to all the time of sort of my childhood self, uh, talking to my older self, and I just, get to, I'm really proud of myself, and I'm so grateful and thankful to be able to sort of like tell him when I read that letter, like, hey, we're doing all right, we're making it happen. And it's incredible.
Awesome. That's such good advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our audience is going to love that. And then just lastly, Presence is very different from a lot of the other projects you've worked on in the past. But for people who haven't seen the movie yet, just what are you most looking forward to? Horror fans or not, just what are you most looking forward to for people who haven't seen the movie and are waiting to see Presence come out?
Oh, I am so excited for you guys to be surprised, and I'm so excited for you guys to be a ghost. I'm sure a lot of people have wondered what it would be like to just be sort of a set of eyes that can float around a house, wherever you want to go, and that's kind of very much what this movie is an experience of. It's very much an experience film. It sort of gives you sort of, this experience of being a ghost, which Steven, he's always, whatever genre he goes into, he's always going to push the boundaries, to its limits. And I think he absolutely attempted and succeeded to do that here.
Oh, awesome. Well, the film was incredible, so congrats. And then just before we close, I have a couple rapid fire questions if you're down for
Mhm.
that.
Absolutely.
They're all about like firsts, so I'll just roll through a couple like
Cool.
first time on set.
Mhm.
So just whatever comes to your mind first. So we'll just roll through a couple. So the first one is what was your first time on set?
First time on set, I did Fresh Off the Boat, and I was a character called Stripes, and I got my seat taken away from me. And my mom got to come with me, and it was a really wonderful time.
Nice. Do you remember your first professional audition?
Ooh, first professional audition. I believe it was one where I had to sing, and it was just after I had sort of started puberty. And I remember I loved to sing when I was younger, and then my
Uh-huh.
voice totally dropped, and so it was like trying to like sing, and I would try to belt all these notes. And oh my gosh, I just sounded I sounded horrific, I'm sure. But I remember just
Funny.
walking out of the audition being like, "Mom, I got the part. I did so good." I ended up not getting the part, but I had so much fun doing it.
Well, look where you are now. So
Yeah.
that was just a bump in the road. There you go. What was the first time you had to cry on cue, if you've done that yet?
Oh, cry on cue. I don't necessarily like the idea of like having to cry on cue. I think it's something that you sort of get there to as an actor.
Yeah.
You should never try to force yourself to have a certain emotional reaction.
Mhm.
My, opinion is that you should be able to like sort of just live whatever the character is living. If it's written in the thing, how can you, I guess, get there as an actor? But really just try to make it as authentic and real as possible, and the tears will sort of come. However, I do like to joke with my friends sometimes if like I'm, very upset about something, or if it's just like they don't like a movie take, I'll like pretend to fake cry, and that always is like a fun thing to do.
Mm. Cool. And is there an actor, actress that you haven't worked with yet that you would love to work with someday?
Oh my gosh. I would love to work with Woody Harrelson. I just think he is so radical, and he is a freaking, oh my gosh, he's like a chameleon. He always brings a sense of himself, but he always has this like just inner crazy kind of chill, but like he's just so explosive. And I think he would just keep me on the edge of my feet the whole time, or tip of my toes. And yeah, I think he's incredible. I would love to work with him one day.
That's such a good one. Do you have a favorite line from a film or TV show that you kind of always go back to?
Oh my gosh, favorite line. I'm sure I do. I think I have a favorite tagline.
Oh, yeah,
My
that's good.
favorite teaser of all time, because I think it's so effective. It doesn't reveal anything about the movie except for what the movie is. The original 1979 Alien teaser, where it kind of, and the lore behind this is they used a brownie tray and then the whatever the most sort of messed up looking egg they could find in the supermarket, and they just lighted it correctly and sort of panned over the egg and then watched the egg crack, and then you get that iconic tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream."
Uh-huh. That's so good. Perfect. Two more. Do you have a favorite snack at Crafty?
Oh, a favorite snack at Crafty. One I just discovered on a new project I was working on, Someone Saved My Life, was the fruit jerky. It is so good.
Oh,
I remember I would just,
interesting.
I actually, the crafty person knew how much I loved them and would sort of hide it for me because it got so popular on set. So shout out to her. She was
Oh,
incredible.
that's a
But
good one. I haven't heard that one before.
the
That's
fruit jerky, it's
yeah,
like it looks like just a beef jerky stick, but it's like a whole
yes.
mango or a whole apple, and you
Oh,
just
that's
eat
so
it.
cool.
It's like it's so great.
Very good. Awesome. And then last one, do you have a favorite or first TV show or film that inspired you to want to become an actor?
I would be kidding myself if I didn't say Star Wars. My uncle introduced me to Star Wars, and I think that just the universe that it brings you to, it is I love the fantasy element, and it just totally brought me to an entirely different place as a kid, to where I would dream of being in an X-wing. I would play around with my flashlight with my friends, and have lightsaber battles, and I would just get so into it. I would get into like playing on the edge of the beach and like pretending I was burning alive and Mustafar like Anakin. Like it was just I think Star Wars was sort of my gateway into as a little kid, storytelling and just sort of playing pretend, because that's really what acting is. And so doing that as a kid really sort of inspired me to want to be an actor today.
So you nailed those. Well, thanks so much for answering all those.
My name is West Mulholland, and thank you so much. Please do not forget to subscribe to Young Entertainment.